Got a chappie challenge. We're fishing at Stonebridge Lakes in North Yorkshire with our brand ambassador and good friend Paul Kazira. And what Chappie said is, I'm going to fish exclusively with the pole.
Yep.
And you're going to fish rod and line.
Yep.
And we're going to contrast the tactics and see how we fare on this wonderful fishery.
No weight target at all, so should we have some on this one, do you think?
Well, you do like to have your little
I'm ready,
side
I'm
bet,
ready
don't
for you. I've got my
Go
pound.
on then. So we'll have a pound on it.
Yeah.
And I have to say, I'm not going to say I'm worried, but I was a bit delayed in the traffic and you were already set up on that peg over there. And I'm looking at it now and it looks like a very nice peg with a big tree. And I seem to be in a little bit of a barren. You wouldn't be stitching me up, would you?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not, mate. I know I got here earlier, but I've not fished.
Okay, I
But
believe
to make
you.
things fair, you know, I pre-baited your swim for you.
Well, anyway, I do trust you, so I'm not going to check your nets.
Yeah.
Let's get started, all right?
Right, great stuff.
Good luck, Paul.
And you, mate. Not too much of it.
Obviously, I'm restricted to fishing the pole today, so what I've decided to do is I've fed 3 different lines. I'm loose feeding casters out about between 14.5 and 16 metres, 6mm pellets by hand at around about 6 metres, and then I'm also feeding down by this bush down the margin. And I know from fishing here before and also from how Paul's explained it, but the target species really for me, I think today is going to be chub and eyed on the caster, fishing shallow, and then hopefully some carp on that pellet line and also down in the margins. And normal tactics here are to loose feed casters regularly and often, perhaps start on something else like a feeder or a different line just to get the fish confidence in feeding. Obviously I can't do that today, so I've just gone as long as I can. I'm trying all different depths, but the most important thing is I'm constantly feeding casters. And so far I've had a few indications, a couple of small roach, but not the target chub or eyed yet. But it's kind of what I expected really. It's going to take some time to attract those chub and eyed to where I'm fishing and start to trick them and get them feeding up in the water. That's just another little roach I just bumped then. So I'm just sort of being patient and quite anxiously watching Paul on the next peg. He's had a few, I think he's had a few bites on his shallow waggler, so hopefully we'll start catching some decent fish soon. Well, on the Chappie challenge today, I've got James fishing the pole and I'm fishing rod and line. And right on cue,
we'll get back to my bit of intro in a minute. I'm fishing the brand new 12-foot match number 2, and I was just about to do my bit of an intro of saying I've set off fishing a pellet feeder while feeding my chub line. And on the chub line we're trying to catch them shallow using caster, and I've been feeding that now for 3/4 of an hour, and I've just thrown in first cast, and I've got a chub on which wants to do me under my keep net. Those of you who do catch chub will realise it's the favourite ploy, but this rod is doing its job at the moment. Don't know whether Chappie can catch that bend in that rod, but it's lovely. That's my first fish on it, and it looks like it's a chub, and it looks like a very good chub as well, looking at that. And he should be mine in a minute. And there we go. Well, I saw you catch a roach, James, so you put the pressure on. I've had a cast. Yeah. Hooks come out. Ooh. And I've got one of our target species. Lovely chub, probably 3.5 pound. What do you think of that? Anyway, where was I on our intro? I'll pop him in the net and we'll start that one again. As I was saying, I set off today, or this morning, on a pellet feeder, throwing across to the island while I've fed the chub line and with casters, and that's applicable to rivers as well. I tend to fish for chub by feeding the first 10 or 15 minutes, give those fish confidence, and before you actually throw a line to them, and it works really well for me. And it seems to have done the trick here as well, because first cast in on that shallow waggler I've had a chub. So I've seen a fish or two swirling about after spending half an hour, 40 minutes just loose feeding casters. So it's definitely worked. My tactics today are just fishing shallow. I've got 2 rods set up. I'm just fishing shallow, 2 different depths on the waggler, and should it go quiet, I've got my pellet method across to the island using the new number 2 9-foot feeder rod, which is absolutely brilliant rod. So I've already had one on it. So I've christened both new rods very early on, and must say I do like this 12-foot number 2 for this job, and I'm sure it'll work on rivers just as well in them tight swims. Well, James is breaking out in a sweat because I've got another fish. But I haven't to get too cocky. Chappie's told me this because it's all gonna go wrong if I don't watch myself. Because looking at James is going short for the carp now, so things might change. So I need to get a few of these in the net before he starts catching those carp. And it's another beautiful chub. Smaller one this time, so a bit easier to subdue. Let's have a look at him. Another lovely Stonebridge chub.
Fair play to Paul, he's had a lovely chub, and I've just had one or two more small roach and I'm getting the odd bite. So what I'm going to do, I think, is I'm going to actually rest this long line at 16 metres. Obviously I'm going to continue to feed it, and I'm going to try my pellet line and margin line. Probably a bit early really to expect a fish on it, but I just want to rest the area that I'm feeding out there and try and get those chub and hide feeding. I think it's pretty obvious, but the chub and hide hug that island over out in the middle of the lake, and that's got to be probably 20 metres. So I'm fishing as far as I can towards that island, but I think I've got to try and drag the fish closer within range of the pole. And who knows, maybe the pole itself is just spooking the fish. So I'll just have another minute on it, and then I'll rest it, keep feeding it, and give it another go later.
Big smile on my face, you can see that. I'm into a carp. Don't you just love this? Don't know how big it is yet. I don't think it's a monster, but it's certainly pulling hard. I'm trying to work out whether James is grimacing or smiling. I can't work it out. Well, I didn't do it justice. I thought it was a little one, but it's a bit bigger than I thought. Oh, look at that. And he's in the net. Fantastic. There you go. Carp to the pellet feeder. Makes a change for me, but I still love it.
I've done what I said. I've come in from a 16 metre line and I'm just feeding casters, and honestly you wouldn't believe it. I can see 2 or 3 chub now cruising around under the surface, so whether it was the pole that was just spooking him a bit, I don't know, but I'm going to keep feeding, just like I would on a river, to try and get the fish confident feeding up in the water, and I'll have another go. I think what I might do as well is try a bit longer line on my rig to keep the pole away from the float. So it's just fascinating. Typical chub. They can be sneaky little buggers at times. Well, that seemed to do the trick. I just kept feeding for about 10 minutes. I could see the chub feeding under the surface, and what I decided to do was, rather than go to full 16 metres, I just went out to 14.5, and I increased the length of my line on the rig, so I'm sure they were spooking from the shadow of the pole. And I'm not sure what this is, but I'm guessing it might be a good chub. I'm just going to take my time because I don't want to lose it. It's taken some catching, this fish. They really do fight on here, these chub, and as always they'll always try and snag you up if they can. Once you get the head up, normally you're all right. And we got him. Well, that's a fish anyway, so
Well done, Jim.
I'm not going to say the pressure's off, but it's a start. And what a lovely chub. Got to be, what do you reckon, chappy? £2? £2. Okay, so I think I'm going to repeat the process. I'm just going to keep feeding for a while before I go out, and I'll see if I can sneak another one. I mentioned before that chub are so wary, and just because these chub are in a lake, it doesn't mean they're any more stupid than a chub in a river. And I think by constantly feeding like this, you're obviously going to attract the chub to where you're feeding, perhaps away from where they're living under the cover of the island. And by constantly feeding small amounts, they're going to be feeding really confidently and perhaps not taking so much notice of the difference with your hook bait. And one thing for sure, they'll also be competing with each other. So I suppose my river sort of skills have come into play, really, just trying to trick them. But I'm also still feeding my 6 metre line with 6mm pellets, and down by this bush in the margin I'm feeding hempen meat, and I've been feeding not heavily but sort of irregularly with good handfuls of hempen meat. So hopefully maybe towards the end of the session I might sneak a couple of bonus fish from by that bush as well. But the good news is I can see more chub out there, so I'm just going to be patient, keep feeding, and see if I can go and sneak another one. Well, as is the case when you're float fishing on most tactics, it pays to constantly adjust the depth that you're fishing and the shotting pattern to change your presentation. And so far today on this shallow rig, I've fished from 3 foot up to just 6 inches depth, and I just caught that chub about a foot deep. And what I've actually done is I've moved all the stots or shot on the line to just underneath the float, so I've just got a very natural fall of bait. And another thing I've done is I just thought I'd try a good river trick, which is to put a maggot on whilst feeding caster. Well, that's another fish. I just had a period of 5 minutes where I could see the chub feeding, but I couldn't catch them. And I just went just a fraction deeper and actually changed over to a double red maggot hook bait, and I think I've got another chub. Well, the pole I'm using is our CP2000. It's a wonderfully versatile pole. As you've seen, I've been fishing it up to 16 metres, no bother today. And it's really nice to try it out on some bigger fish like these chub and hopefully carp on a commercial. I've actually got this has got a 12 to 14 elastic in. It's quite a soft elastic. And as you can see, I'm using this puller kit. And I'm actually using the match top 2 at the moment, but we also do a power top as well, which I've set up with a heavier 14 elastic for those carp in the margins. But, I'm just taking my time because I know what these chub can do. They can suddenly change direction and snag you up. There we go, there's another one. So that's 2 chub. I think that one's a bit bigger. I think Chappie might even give me £3 for that one. I just nicked him in the top of the mouth. So I'm going to repeat the process. I'm going to feed for 5 minutes before I go out and see if I can get them competing in the feed again. And I'm just going to try my short line on the pellet.
Yeah, I've gone through quite a lull since in the fishing since the sun came out, and carried on feeding the casters. Not seen any signs of chub really. I've had a go on the pellet feeder and same, not a sign. It's just like they've switched off. Out of the blue, I've hooked one. Now I'm not sure whether it's foul hooked or not, because I just catapulted some casters in and drove back into the swim, so might be that it's foul hooked, but it don't look like it. Let's have a look. Oh no, it's hooked properly, just a good chub. And I've just changed to a banded caster. Whether that's made any difference or not, I don't know. But I haven't had a bite for ages, and it's my first cast with a banded caster. Oh yeah, it's hooked properly. And this rod's certainly doing its job. Love it, love it, love it, love it. There he comes. You can probably still see the caster in its mouth there, look. What a nice fish. Let's have a look at him. What a lovely chub. Fall onto a banded caster. If I get this right, you might just be able to see that. Perfect illustration of how the banded caster works. Well, I'm in again, and it's definitely got a bit harder, but I'm still fishing that banded caster, and believe it or not, all you true Yorkshiremen are going to love this one. This is on the same caster as I caught that last chub with. So there's a money saving tip for you. And it's yeah, another chub fallen to the waggler shallow on the caster. And here he comes. Let's have a look at him. A southerner's fish, about £2. We're in again. It's getting boring this. How's it going your end, James? Are you living the dream though? You must be watching me fish. we go. Well, that rod pulled him out of there nicely. Banded caster again. And that's chub number 3 to the banded caster, and it's the same caster. Oh, he's fighting in the net. Lovely chub. 2.5 pound chappy. Let's have him in the net. You got that caster? Save that for chub number 4. Right, what's this we've got? Well as the chub that we're catching here, there's something just a little bit special about Stonebridge Lakes, and you're just going to witness one now. Well, we've had that on the scales. Absolutely stunning hide is that, and it weighed £5 2 ounces. Brilliant. What a venue, Stonebridge, for these sort of fish.
Well, Paul's definitely taken the lead now. I think he's had 4 chub, a big hide and a carp, and I'm still on 2 chub, so I thought, why not have a little break and just watch what he's doing. And typical Paul, and thanks to Pauline, look at that for a packed lunch. I think I'm gonna spend a bit of time enjoying that. Thanks, Pauline.
Right, today we've had a few carp on the pellet feeder. You're pretty much all familiar with how that works, so I won't go into great details about that. I've had a few carp, they've been my bonus carp really, but the one thing I will say is the new CR10 9-foot feeder too. It's been an absolute dream to use. I've never felt in trouble with the carp at all. It's played them beautifully. Right, perhaps what will be of greater interest to you is my waggler setup. It's pretty unique really, and it's one I use a lot for fishing up in the water. We're setting off with a waggler, which is just a short dumpy waggler, but one thing I don't do is put them on a float adapter. I like my wagglers, when I'm fishing shallow like this with these short wagglers, to be just fished direct to the line and sandwiched between a few small number 8 shot. And as you can see, I'll leave the gap there, and that's just enabling the float to fold over on strike, and it gives me a better chance of hitting the fish. So I fished this today just with a 2-pound Maxima line to my CR10 3000 match reel, and I'm using today the new CR10 12-foot match 2. It's the first time I've used it, and it's an absolute brilliant rod. I've really enjoyed playing the fish on this. It's great on the strike, picks up line quick, and it certainly helps me with the playing action of those fish. It certainly helps land them easily. Another little thing of interest, which I just failed to mention, is the most successful bait for me today has been the caster banded. And you might pick up on the actual video itself. I've caught 4 fish on a single caster, because the fish don't crush the caster, and one of the benefits I see behind it, and it's helped me get more bites